Pete Griffin began his association with the U.S. Forest Service in 1973, the year the Endangered Species Act was passed. He arrived in Juneau as the district ranger in 1999, serving as ranger until his retirement in 2010. Please welcome Pete Griffin, storyteller, in Diary of a Forest Ranger.
It's a warm August evening on the Chippewa National Forest in northern Minnesota. I'm driving one of those Forest Service green pickup trucks down a one-lane logging road. I pull off to the side, shut the truck off, ease out the door, stand in the dark for a couple of moments, then I tip my head back. And then, from the dark woods at the end of the road, it's a pack of wolves. The hair stands up on the back of my neck. I get goosebumps. It's a pack of wolves talking to me. I'm 4 years old. I'm living in a 2-room cabin with my mother and dad and baby sister. There's a pitcher pump on the sink. There's an outhouse out back. Dad's cutting cedar for my grandfather. My mother takes care of my baby sister. And I have got the run of the entire little island that we live on. I love walking through the dark cedar woods and pine woods. The air smells like evergreens. I hear birds singing in the treetops. I can't see them. I wonder what kind of birds they are. I spend a lot of time in the woods alone. I have 2 friends, Vicky and Harner. They live in an orange crate at the end of the road. My mother calls them my imaginary friends. I walk along the shoreline. I turn over the flat limestone rocks in the shallow water looking for crayfish and minnows. They're the same kind of rocks my grandfather built his stacked stone fireplace out of. I love spending time in the woods alone. I'm alone, but I'm never lonely. In the evening when it gets too dark to be out in the woods, sometimes I'll walk along the road and I'll scoop up a handful of pebbles and I will fling them up into the air as high as I can and watch the bats swoop in. They can see in the dark. They think those pebbles are mosquitoes. They fly, but they're not birds. I only see them at night. I wonder where they hide during the day. I become a wildlife biologist because I want to know the birds that I hear singing in the woods. I want to know where the bats hide during the day. I want a job where I can be in the woods all by myself and never have to talk to another person. Back in Minnesota, we finish up our wolf hauling survey. We meet back at the district office at about midnight. Now, before this survey, wolves had always been the province of the wildlife biologist. Pete, I saw one of your wolves cross the highway over by Reamer. Pete, I was out in the swamp cruising timber and I saw where a pack of your wolves had dragged down a deer. But tonight, our new biologist said we needed everybody's help on the district to conduct this wolf howling survey. So everybody participated, the folks who worked in the office, the people that worked in timber, the recreation specialists. Even the district ranger went out and howled for wolves, and everybody has heard wolves. One of the foresters tells us about his experience. Yeah, we're up there on the north shore of Leech Lake, and it was quiet, and wind was calm, and it's hot, and it's humid, and all you could do was hear the mosquitoes buzzing. And then across the lake, there's the tribe was putting on a powwow. You could hear the drums. Boom, 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 boom. And we howled for wolves, and wolves howled back at us from the woods. We're standing there on the shore, drums rolling in at us across the water, and the wolves howling from the woods behind us. It was like we were voyageurs 300 years ago. Well, up until this point, I had never considered foresters could be poets. Foresters? Poetry? It's 1987. I am the brand new assistant ranger for other resources on the Walker Ranger District of the Chippewa National Forest. Other resources, that's easier to say than assistant ranger for wildlife, campgrounds, trails, special uses, lands, fire suppression, manpower programs, cultural resources. It's also easier to say than assistant ranger for everything except timber. Now, my first week on the forest, I go out and I tour our most popular campground on Leech Lake. I go out there and I meet Tom, the campground manager, and we walk around the campground, and in a storage building, I see a stack of have-a-heart live traps. Tom, what do you use the live traps for? Skunks. We get skunks here, and when they get to be a problem, we trap them. Oh, that's great. You know, most people would just kill them. Tom looks at me like I was born yesterday. Oh, we tie a line on the trap, then we drag over to Boat Harbor and drown them. Oh, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I'm a wildlife biologist. We shouldn't be killing animals just because we don't like the way they make their living. Next time we trap a skunk, we're going to release it live someplace else. You ever done that before? Well, no, but people do it all the time. A month later, I'm in the office. I get a call on the radio. It's Tom. Yeah, Pete, we got the big stinker last night. What do you want us to do with him? Tom knew exactly what I wanted him to do with that skunk. And I was about to tell him, but then I thought, this is a test for a new supervisor. I was asking Tom to do something risky that I had never done before, and neither had he. Well, hang on, Tom, I'll be right out. So I drive out to the campground in the pickup. I back the pickup up to where I know the skunk is. Tom's standing about 100 feet upwind. I look at that skunk. Oh, it is magnificent. It fills the whole trap. I sit on the tailgate of that truck and I admire him. Oh, it fills the whole trap. His fur is as black as coal, and that white stripe down his back and up his tail is the color of a cumulus cloud against a blue July sky. I decide that I had better calm him down just a little bit, so I'm going to talk to him. Tell him what my expectations are and what I'm going to do. And because we're in the middle of the Leech Lake Indian Reservation, home to the Leech Lake Band of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, I decided that it would be good if I used every word and phrase I know in the Chippewa language. Bonjour, Mishomas. Greetings, grandfather. Pete and Dijnakas, Walker and Donjaba. My name is Pete. I live in Walker. Min Wajimo. Telling a good story. Mondwe Anamud. The voice of the wind in the pine trees. Geniwin Ganiwinda Ki Gayadush Wida Kaubim and Dizajig. We take care of the earth and we help people. Wabshka Jikang. White stump. Gitchi Magwetch. Great thanks. He's looking a little calmer now. So very gently, very carefully, I pick up the trap and I move it over to the back of the pickup and very carefully set it in the bed of the pickup, close the gate, drive off, wave to Tom on the way by. And I drive 10 miles out to the wood tick fields. Now this is a place where I know that yellow jackets nest in the ground around the edges of the field. There's mice, there's grass, there are ponds where a skunk can find frogs. This is a veritable skunk paradise. I back into the fields. I take the trap out of the back of the truck. I set it down very carefully, very gently, and I tell that skunk what's going to happen and what my expectations of it are. It's at that moment I realize my plan has a fatal flaw. I've got to touch the trap to open the door to let him out. Not only that, the door is spring-loaded. I have to hold it open. Okay. So I reach down, I spring the door open and I hold it. Okay, Mashomas, you can go now. You are free. He doesn't move. He's too big to turn around in the trap. And he's not going to back out because he can't see what's behind him. Okay, you can go now. So I tilt the trap up a little bit to encourage him. You can go now, and he's hanging on with his claws in the wire mesh. You can go now, so I invert the trap a little more. You can go now. I give it a little shake, and he hangs on just a little bit tighter. I invert the trap. You can go now. I give it one last shake. He slides out, hits the ground. Machomas, I close my eyes. When nothing happens, I open them up. All I see is his back end with his tail up, but he's waddling into the grass away from me. Whoa. Yeah. I pick up the trap, I throw it in the back of the truck, drive back to the campground. Tom's waiting in the same place I'd left him. Upwind. How'd it go, Pete? Nothing to it, Tom. All you got to do is talk to him. I'm sitting in my office one afternoon when I get a phone call. Yeah, Pete, this is Bill down at the boat shop. DJ Johnson has had an accident. We called the ambulance, but DJ's little boy is here. Can you come and pick him up and take him back to the office? Yeah, I can do that. DJ and Nancy were a young couple that worked for the Forest Service. They lived in town. Their kids were the same age as our kids. I go and pick up DJ's little boy. He's 4 years old. DJ had been gluing carpet in the bottom of his boat. He'd been overcome by the fumes. I take DJ's little boy back to the office, and I set him up in my office so he's typing away on the computer, and I find him some pretzels to munch on. Our employees gather in the reception area downstairs, waiting for word. When one of them pokes his head in the door of my office and gives me a grim look and a slow shake of his head, I know that DJ didn't make it. A few minutes later, Nancy and her daughter, trailed by their family minister, come into the office, and I give Nancy a teary hug, and she brushes by me and into my office with the minister, and as the door closes, I hear Nancy tell her children, "Daddy's an angel now." I feel helpless. There is nothing that I can do to help this family through this time. At DJ's memorial service, the church is packed. The minister offers a prayer, and then he asks the question, who here is willing to do whatever it takes to help this family through this difficult time. And as one, everyone in the congregation stands up. And I think that if it had been me, they would have done the same thing for my family. I love being a wildlife biologist. Some of the most enriching experiences in my life have been as a wildlife biologist. I make sure that our projects take into account the needs of the deer and the grouse and the bear and the wolves and the eagles and the warblers. But I come to the realization that people who make decisions about personnel and budgets have far more influence over the wildlife program than I ever would as a field biologist. So I decided to become the man in charge, the man behind the desk, a district ranger. I start applying for ranger jobs all over the country. 5, 10, 15. I pin the rejection letters up on my bulletin board for a while as a joke until I run out of space. So I asked my ranger for advice. Dean, I am not having any luck on my ranger applications. What can I do? Well, Pete, looking at your career and where you've been and your experience, I think you could use some experience at higher levels in the organization, including Washington, D.C., or some experience in environmental law. You can't get either of those on the Chippewa National Forest. So I broadened my job search. And one day, I come across 2 vacancy announcements on opposite sides of the country. I take them home. Now, Kathy knows that I have been looking for other jobs, ranger jobs, and she's supportive in that. I show her the vacancy announcements. One is in recreation in Washington, D.C. It's a promotion. The other's in Ketchikan, Alaska as an environmental coordinator. It's a promotion too. She gives me one of those looks. You know the one. Yeah. Not Washington, D.C. We are not going there. What about Ketchikan? She sighs. Is there a hospital in Ketchikan? There is a hospital. It's like 12,000 people. There's 3 elementary schools and a middle school and a high school. They've got a mall. They've got a McDonald's. There are almost as many churches as there are bars in Ketchikan. Okay, you can apply for Ketchikan. I do. 2 months later, I'm offered the job. So we sell the house, we pack up our belongings, we strap the kids into the Dodge minivan. The kids make a little cardboard sign, Alaska or bust, that they display in the window of the van on our trip across country. We head to Bellingham to catch the state ferry, and while we're in Bellingham, I stop in a bookstore to buy a book of Western birds. I see somebody with purple hair. That's a first for me. Oh! We get on the ferry, we pull into Ketchikan on a crisp September morning before light. We cruise up the Tongass Narrows. The city is all lit up. Kathy and the kids are at the rail scoping out our new home. And me, I'm in the bathroom in our stateroom getting sick to my stomach. What have I gotten myself into? I'm supposed to be reviewing environmental impact statements, and I've never even held one in my hands. Well, we dock in Ketchikan, we get off the ferry, we find our apartment that'll be our temporary home for a couple of weeks. And we tell the kids, well, first thing we're going to do tomorrow morning is we're going to find out what school we're going to put you in. They look at me confused. There's schools in Ketchikan? Yeah, there sure are. Now, despite my earlier misgivings, I do well as the environmental coordinator for several years. I move out to the Ketchikan Ranger District as the team leader for timber sale planning. And I apply for ranger jobs, lower 48 in Alaska. Still no success. But then the Ketchikan District Ranger transfers to the lower 48. Now there's always a gap between the time the old ranger transfers and the new ranger is hired, so I get appointed as the acting district ranger for Ketchikan. I walk into my office, and there's my desk, sitting square in the middle of that office. Now this is my first chance to start making a difference. I move my desk to a 45-degree angle. The district clerk walks in. "What are you doing?" "What do you mean, what am I doing?" "Your desk, it's crooked." "It's not crooked, it's at a 45-degree angle." "That's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be square in the middle of the office." She leaves, shaking her head. "Not while I'm the ranger." Now, the other thing that I do is I keep a little white book. And in that little white book, I write down every time one of my employees does something good or I hear a report of them doing something good. I do that because when I was a young biologist and I was out in the woods with the old guys, they told me about a ranger who kept a little black book. And in that little black book, he would write down every mistake you made for a whole year. And at the end of the year, during performance evaluations, he would read from that little black book every mistake that you had made. Now, I've been around long enough to know that you don't forget the mistakes, you don't remember the good stuff. So during performance evaluations, I would pull out my little white book and I would read to that employee all the good things that I had seen them do or heard of them doing for the past year. I think I'm starting to make a difference. When the job announcement comes out, I apply for the job for the Ketchikan Ranger District. I learn that there are only 8 applicants. Now, every ranger job I've applied for down south, there were like 30 or 40 or 50 applicants. On this one, I'm in the top 10. That list is whittled down to 3, me and 2 other folks from the lower 48. We're all brought together to be interviewed. We're interviewed by the forest supervisor and by his staff and by the people on the district. I feel really good about this one. We pass each other in the halls, all the ranger candidates. This may be my last opportunity. I've told myself that I am not going to apply for any jobs once the kids get into high school. So this is my last application. Well, I've got one other application out. One day I get a call from the forest supervisor. "Yeah, Pete, this is Brad." "Yeah, what is it, Brad?" "I just want to tell you that we hired Jerry Ingersoll to be the district ranger in Ketchikan. I wanted to make sure you heard that from me before you heard it from anybody else." Thanks. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate that call. Well, that's it. The only other ranger application I have out is for the Juneau Ranger District. It's the largest ranger district in the nation at 3.5 million acres. It's in the state capital. It's political. It's high profile. I know the people that have been district ranger in Juneau, and they want a special person. Not me. My last day as the acting ranger in Ketchikan, I arranged notes on the new ranger's desk, things that he's going to need to know right away Monday morning. I leave the office late Friday. I'm back in the office early Monday morning. I want to talk to the new ranger before anybody else does. I walk into the ranger's office, and over the weekend, somebody has come in and rearranged the office so the desk is sitting square in the middle of the office again. Jerry comes in a couple of minutes later. Jerry, you got a minute? Sure, come on in, Pete. Jerry, I just want to let you know, I really wanted this job, but you were hired. You're the Ketchikan District Ranger now. I work for you. And my job is to do the best I can and make you look as good as possible. I just wanted to let you know there's no hard feelings on my part. I went back to work. Now, a couple of months later, we have what the Forest Service likes to call a family meeting. There's usually a safety topic. There's news about promotions and transfers. Sometimes there are awards handed out. And this meeting is held at the Discovery Center in the auditorium in Ketchikan. Most of our employees are there. The new forest supervisor, Jim Webb, he's handing out awards. Pete Griffin, is Pete Griffin here? Yeah, come on down, Pete. Well, I walk down to the stage. Jim reads the little announcement. For outstanding performance as the acting ranger in Ketchikan, we have a cash award for Pete Griffin. Oh, thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. I turn to walk away, and Jim puts his hand on my shoulder. Oh, he says, we're not done yet. I know something about Pete Griffin that even he doesn't know yet. Pete is going to be the next district ranger in Juneau. I hear way up in the audience somebody goes, way to go, Pete, and everybody starts laughing. So I am the district ranger in Juneau. I send a note to my parents. I am now the district ranger for the largest ranger district in the nation, on the largest national forest in the nation, in the capital city of the largest state in the nation. The first time my name is on a complaint filed in federal district court, I send my parents a copy of the cover page. I knew this was going to get complicated. So I'm in the office one morning. I get a call from the forest supervisor. Pete, this is Forrest. I don't know if you've heard yet, but Leon Stuck died this morning. Leon? I didn't know Leon all that well. Other than I remember his wife Susan calling him the human jungle gym. Because sometimes when Leon would get home from work and he'd arrive at the office from out in the field, he'd be met by his family, his 4 little girls, and he would walk across the parking lot with one little girl hanging on one leg, another little girl hanging on the other, one tucked under his arm and the 4th hanging around his neck with her arms around his neck. He'd been helicoptered up to a remote mountain radio repeater the day before and had gotten weathered in, rained and snowed on, and he decided that the only way to get out was to walk down the mountain the next morning, and he fell. Now, as the ranger, my job is to go support that family. And so I go over to the Stuck residence, and Susan and I share a hug. There are 4 little girls standing quietly behind their mother. Susan, if there's anything you need, anything at all, you call me day or night. Call me first. Over the next 2 weeks, I spend an awful lot of time with that family, several hours a day, helping them through the process. The people who work for me and the people who work with Leon, they want to help too. They set up a bank account where we can deposit donations for that family. They organize a luncheon to raise money for the family. They solicit donations and hold an auction to raise money for the family. I bid $100 on a peach pie that sells for $400. So much is done for that family by my co-workers. I was impressed. Over the course of 2 weeks, we raise almost $10,000 for that family. And I know that if it had been me, that they would have done the same thing for my family. So in the fall of 2002, Juneau becomes host to a national celebrity. Not Sarah Palin. A black wolf moves into the Mendenhall Valley. Now, I think this wolf is going to keep going because he doesn't have a pack. He's going to go over the mountains to find his own pack. But no, he sticks around. And after the lake freezes over, he's seen out on the lake standing out like a black peppercorn bouncing across a white tablecloth. People that are cross-country skiing out on the lake with their dogs report that sometimes this wolf will come out of the woods and approach their dogs, hackles up stiff-legged, and the wolf and the dogs will do that whole sniffing and circling thing, and then the wolf will lower himself on his front legs, bound up into the air, and play with the dogs. The wolf and dogs will play together. Well, word gets around. More people take up cross-country skiing out on the lake with their dogs, hoping for an encounter with this 120-pound wild black wolf. People take his picture, and the pictures wind up on the front page of the Juneau Empire, and then on the papers in the lower 48. And the wolf gets a name, Romeo. Romeo. Wherefore art thou, Romeo? I'd have called him Voldemort. Now, the wolf is a predator. Every once in a while, the wolf will run out of the woods, grab a little dog, run back into the woods, and the dog is never seen again. Sometimes it will scoop up a little dog. Halfway back to the woods, it'll spit the little dog out like it didn't taste good. The friends of Romeo have an explanation. Well, you see, Romeo was not the alpha wolf in his pack. He was the bachelor uncle wolf. And the role of the bachelor uncle wolf is to play with the pups and watch over them, and they'll carry him around in their jaws, and that's all Romeo is doing. He's doing the bachelor wolf thing. Yeah, maybe. One day I get a call from a young woman. Pete, you've got to do something about that wolf. I was walking my daughter to the bus stop before daylight the other day, and there was that wolf sitting 20 feet away from us watching us walk by. I don't trust that wolf. You're responsible for public safety in the Mendenhall Glacier Recreation Area. Pete, you've got to do something. Okay. Shortly thereafter, the wolf bursts out of the brush on the south side of Mendenhall Lake, makes off with the little brown dog, and the little brown dog is never seen again. Pete, you've got to do something. Okay. Well, I need help. I checked the Forest Service manual. I checked the Forest Service handbook. I checked the Tongass Land Management Plan standards and guidelines, but there's no entry under wolf, black, friendly. Now, one of the things that I have learned over the years that when faced with a dilemma, an unsolvable problem, a minor government bureaucrat like myself has two options. You can call a meeting, or you can issue a press release. Both give the illusion that you're making progress on solving a problem. So I cobble together a press release. I throw in all kinds of irrelevant detail, and that's not enough. So I add the advisories for hiking and bear country. I just global replace bear with wolf. And then at the end, the folks in Washington, D.C. say we have to end every one of our press releases with the following statement: the U.S. Department of Agriculture is an equal opportunity employer. Now, the folks in Washington have also said that we need to get every one of our press releases approved at a higher level before issuing them. But they're not facing a deadline with the Juneau Empire. So I email my press release directly to the Juneau Empire and the radio stations. There, I have done something. Now, the next morning, I have a meeting with our public affairs staff officer, Dennis Neal, up at the Mendenhall Glacier Visitor Center. I walk in, Dennis sees me. "Hey, Pete," he said, "wow, what a great press release. I can't believe it. That was really wonderful." I know sarcasm when I see it. "Oh, Dennis, I'm sorry. I know I should have got it approved first, but I had this deadline, and I know it wasn't very good." "Wasn't very good?" He said, "That might be the most creative thing I have ever seen come out of a Forest Service office. That might be the most creative press release ever in the 100-year history of the U.S. Forest Service." I don't understand. "Oh man," he said, "a press release from Romeo, that was brilliant." A press release from Romeo? "Do you have a copy of this?" "Yeah, right here on the fax machine." So I read it. "News from the forest. For more information, contact Romeo. Wolf takes small dog on Mendenhall Lake, Juneau, Alaska." Yes, it's true. I grabbed a small brown dog on the south side of Mendenhall Lake and ran off into the woods with him. I didn't want to, but it startled me. I'm sorry, but I'm a wolf. I'm unpredictable. So I ate him. You may not have seen me around for the last couple of weeks, which may have led to complacency on the part of you people walking your dogs. But my picture's on the front page of the newspaper a lot. My press agent sees to that. You've forgotten about me already? People using the Mendenhall Glacier Recreation Area need to remember the following. This is a forest. Wild things live here. It's my right. Remember, be alert. I can be active day and night. I'm everywhere. I'm always watching you. Make noise while hiking. Try not to startle me. I'm serious. Don't startle me. It ticks me off. Never approach me. I'm wild. Get it? I'm wild. I will eat you and your little dog too. Yeah. I am an equal opportunity predator. Oh no, Dennis, this didn't get out to the public, did it? Oh, my career is ruined. No, it was just here on the fax machine. I tracked down the person responsible for turning my dry little press release into a parody. It's an attorney that I know from downtown. She's given me good legal advice over the years. I take her to lunch. I tell her in no uncertain terms, I may not name names, but someday, somehow, somewhere, I'm going to use your press release. Thank you. Now the wolf disappears a while later. And the Friends of Romeo put up a plaque on one of the trails out by the Mendenhall Glacier. The spirit of Juneau's friendly black wolf lives on in this wild place. Now, some people revered this wolf, some people just loved it, and other people hated it. From my standpoint, I thought that it was something that only 10 miles from downtown Juneau, a person could go out in the evening and hear a wild wolf howl. That can't be said about any other state capital in the country. It's September 11th, 2001. I'm sitting alone in my office after having sent everybody home. I listen to the radio reports from around the country, from Washington, D.C., and New York City, in a field in rural Pennsylvania. And I recognize that this is one of those milestone events, one of those watershed events by which we measure our lives. There is the time before that event, and there is the time after that event. Every generation has them. For my generation, maybe it was the Kennedy assassination. For my parents, Pearl Harbor. For my grandparents, the stock market crash in 1929 and the Great Depression. For my great-grandparents, maybe it was in 1918 and the end of the war to end all wars. For my great-grandmother, it was 1903, the year the Wright brothers flew. She was absolutely thrilled. She was 15 years old at the time. Her father, not so much. If God had meant man to fly, he would have given him wings. But my great-grandmother lived to see Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. Now, along with those national events by which we mark our lives, there are also personal events that change the way we look at the world. And for me, one of those events was in May of 1980. I'm worried about the extinction of a bird, Kirtland's warbler. It's a beautiful little bird. It's got a faintly streaked yellow breast and a slate gray back and a song so sweet and clear. This bird nests in only 4 counties in northern Lower Michigan. In 1980, there are only 480 of these birds left in the world. At a half ounce of peach, the entire population weighs only 15 pounds. You can put the whole population in a brown paper grocery bag. It nests only in young jack pine growing on the poorest, sandiest, most sterile soils in the world. And jack pine is a tree species that's dependent on fire to reproduce. Because its cones are so hard, they only open up in the heat of a forest fire. Think about that, a tree dependent on fire to reproduce. A stand of jack pines, mature jack pines, has to die in a forest fire to spawn a new generation of jack pine. And that's where the warbler nested, in those young jack pine trees. They don't nest in the old trees at all. But forest fires pose a risk to life and property that we can't tolerate anymore. The Forest Service and the state of Michigan have done a good job in preventing forest fires and putting out the ones that do start. And as a result, the amount of habitat available to the Kirtland's warblers is declining. But we have a plan. We clear-cut large areas of jack pine for pulpwood, and we leave the branches and the tops scattered through the opening. And then when the weather conditions are just right, we burn the clear cuts, burn up the branches, burn up the tops, the cones open up, release the seeds, and a new generation of jack pine has begun. But we're falling behind on our targets. I know why. It's because the Forest Service isn't committed. This bird's going extinct, but there's always an excuse. Oh, the weather conditions aren't quite right. Oh, it's on a weekend, we don't want to pay overtime. Oh, we don't have enough equipment. The bird is going extinct. But one morning, the morning of May 5th, 1980, conditions seemed to be perfect. They start burning that clear cut, and there are flame lengths a foot and a half high going through the clear cut. This is working great. That clear cut's like 200 acres. It's over a half-mile square each side. And things are going just good. And then the fire burns into some slash piles along the control line. Slash piles of branches and tops they're several feet high, and the fire gets into that, and the fire leaps 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet Column of smoke rises up and embers drift out across the fire line, starting spot fires on the other side. That's not unusual. We have a crew to take care of that. My friend Jim's on a bulldozer with a fire plow. His job is to locate those spot fires, circle them with his fire plow so the hand crews can come behind and put those little fires out. But there are more spot fires and more spot fires, and then finally a spot fire starts in a patch of short jack pine. And the tops of those short jack pine catch fire, and the fire leaps from there to the tops of the mature jack pine, and a crown fire starts, and a huge column of smoke goes up, and embers drift to the east 200 feet across the state highway. Jim crosses the highway on his bulldozer, chasing down that fire, laying down a furrow. The wind swirls, and Jim disappears into the smoke of what has become known as the Mac Lake Fire. A firefighter will tell you that standing next to a crown fire is like standing next to the tracks as a freight train roars by. Air pulses and it feels like you're being drawn into it. There's a rumble and a roar, and you can almost feel the ground shake. When a crown fire starts, there's nothing a human being can do to stop it. While all this is going on, I'm 90 miles away in Cadillac, Michigan. I'm at a meeting. I know something's up when the forest supervisor comes in and he takes the timber staff officer and the fire staff officer out with him. I don't know what's going on, but at the end of the day, I race home, I turn on the television, and there's a banner going across the bottom of the screen. The Oscoda County Sheriff's Department requests all available manpower and heavy equipment to report tomorrow to battle a forest fire that's burned thousands of acres, destroyed 40 homes, and resulted in one fatality. Within minutes, I get a phone call from my supervisor. Pete, grab your fire gear. Meet at the office in 30 minutes. So I pull on my green fire pants and my yellow fire shirt. I lace up my leather boots. I grab my hard hat and my gloves and my goggles and my fire shelter and canteen. I throw them in with my fire pack, race to the office, and I join a growing crowd of people dressed just like me standing in the gravel parking lot in the twilight. I see Cliff, the fire staff officer, in the office. I go in. Cliff, who died? It was Jim Swiderski. Jim and I were both young wildlife biologists. The last time we talked was the previous winter, and we talked about how the wildlife program would be different if we were in charge. We talked about how much fun we had operating bulldozers on the fire line. Jim? That doesn't make sense. The next morning, I'm standing on the fire line. There's no fire left. It had burned itself out the afternoon before when it ran out of pine trees. But I stand on the fire line, green on one side, black on the other. The air's heavy with the smell of a burned forest. It's quiet, there are no birds singing. I walk out into that burned area, standing among the blackened skeletons of burned jack pine. Naked black branches thrust upward as though beseeching a higher power. And in the tops of those branches, I see jack pine cones that have opened like flowers blossoming in the morning sun. I kneel and I look at the ash on the ground, and there's a jack pine seed there and there and there. Every few inches there's a jack pine seed. I know that with the next spring rain, those seeds are going to germinate. Kirtland's warblers will nest in this place. Now there's an investigation. Mistakes were made. and the results of each mistake compounded on the results of previous mistakes. I know that if I had been in charge that morning, I would have started that fire too. I know that if I had been on that bulldozer, I would have done the same thing Jim had done. 7 years later, the first Kirtland's warblers nest in the Mac Lake burn. 20 years later, there are 2,000 Kirtland warblers. 30 years later, there are 4,000 Kirtland's warblers, and they nest not only in those 4 counties in northern lower Michigan, they nest in similar habitats in Wisconsin and upper Michigan and in Ontario. The bird is no longer on the brink of extinction as it once had been. And that's a good thing. But today I ask myself the same question I asked myself while standing on the fire line of the Mac Lake fire. Is saving a species from extinction worth the life of one young man? I'm thinking about retirement. I talked to Kathy about it, and she says, I have a hard time thinking of you as no longer the Juneau District Ranger. And I know what she means. This has been with me for 35 years, a wildlife biologist, a ranger. Who will I be when that ends? But I do retire. My last day in the office, I wander through the office thinking about the people that I have worked with, the people who are still with us, and the people who are no longer with us. I had the job of my dreams, that job where I could be out in the woods all by myself and never have to talk to another person. It's funny how those dreams change, isn't it? When I walk out the door for the final time, the door locks shut behind me. I know that I can never return unless invited. At my retirement party, there's lots of speeches and gifts, and at the end of the night, it's my turn to stand up and give my farewell address. I've got a story for every occasion, except on this night. I don't know what to say. And then it comes to me. When I was a young hire with the U.S. Forest Service in 1974, I attended my first Forest Service family meeting. And at the end of the meeting, the forest supervisor stood up in front and he looked out over his people. And he asked the question, is there anybody here that doesn't feel like they're a member of the Forest Service family? I raised my hand. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I just need to let folks know that I'm different. I don't need other people. But standing here on this night, the night of my retirement party, I realize that I have been a member of that Forest Service family for years. I know that if anything had ever happened to me, my family would have been taken care of as well. And then that's it. It's over. Today, when I walk through those same cedar and pine woods I did as a boy, I recognize the birds just by their songs. Black-capped chickadee, black-throated green warbler, my favorite, the white-throated sparrow. I know that the little brown bats I used to tease with the pebbles in the air when I was young, they roost in trees in hollow trees during the day and in the attics of old cabins. I know so much more than I did as a 4-year-old boy. Not long after my retirement party, I'm out fishing all by myself out in North Pass. There's not another boat in sight. There's no wind. The water is flat, calm. The tide is running. I shut off the engine, and I'm bathed in silence. I hear a humpback whale spout. I step out onto the back deck, and up out of the water, 100 yards away, comes a whale, just up, out, water streaming off its fins, and it arches its back, and it lands with a huge splash and a whoomph. And again, up out of the water, splash and a whoomph. And a third time, 3 full breaches, and I don't have a camera. But I don't need one. I wonder why they do that. I'm still 4 years old.